If this is going to be an allegory for 9/11 and the idea of like a false flag attack in order to curtail freedoms and stuff, this kind of seems very similar to sort of like Alex Jones, like Sandy Hook was a false flag to try and take our guns away. 9/11 was a false flag in order to install a bigger surveillance state. I don't know, it kind of feels like it's a 9/11 parallel that leans into the 9/11 being an inside job.
If aliens fake an alien crash, an alien pilot, what do they get? They get us. It's not a diversion, it's a trap.
Obviously, it's sci-fi fiction for a family audience, so I don't think it was like deliberately going for that, and maybe it shouldn't be interpreted as such, but the art is what the art is. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS, and we're now at the first two-part story, multi-part story of Doctor Who's revival. Now, in the classic series, basically every single story was serialized, especially in the early 1960s when each story would roll over into the next one. Each story would end on a cliffhanger leading into the next one. But now, with this two-parter, Aliens of London and World War III, Russell T Davies decides what we're going to do for the first big cliffhanger of the show. Let's do all of the cliffhangers at the same time. But before we get to that, I hope you folks have been enjoying this retrospective 20 years later look back at Doctor Who, the revived series that came out 20 years ago. We are now 4 episodes into the 13 episode run. If you want to keep up to date with all of these reaction videos and everything I'm doing on this channel, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button as well down below, leave any comment down below to appease the almighty YouTube algorithm, as this week we're going to talk about Aliens of London. It's an interesting story on reflection because I admire what it's going for, but whenever I revisit it, it doesn't seem to fully hold together, even though, as is typical with most Russell T Davies material, that there's some really brilliant isolated moments in there which kind of salvage the whole thing. What's super interesting though in retrospect is that now in the early 2020s, people are just incensed at the idea of politically charged media that's trying to say something, media with a message. Now, I obviously disagree with that. I think that the media that's trying to say something is the most interesting media because it allows a peek behind the curtain at the person who's making it, someone who's passionate enough to be able to channel their thoughts and their feelings and their views on the world into a piece of media. Doctor Who did this all the time, especially in the 1960s. If you've gone through my Hartnell Marathon retrospective reviews, I make a point to try and talk about the actual writers who made the material and the directors as well and the script editors, because these are people who were passionate and wanted to say something. However, it feels like as fandom and online spaces become more radicalized and reactionary, it just feels like they just want mediocre, sloppy material that has nothing on its mind and nothing to say. And with Aliens of London, it's very obviously a post-9/11 story. It is trying to say something about the war on terror. It is trying to say something about, lying politicians and fake news and how to engineer a consent amongst the population through some external threat that is manufactured. Jesus Christ, we're going to get to this when we react to World War III, but they basically almost quote verbatim the weapons of mass destruction line from George W. Bush and Tony Blair in the early 2000s. It's not subtle. And Doctor Who in the 1960s was also not subtle. I understand people having their preference for media, but if you want subtle political allegory, then you don't come to Doctor Who for that. Doctor Who can do that, it has done that, but if you're going into Doctor Who expecting subtle or very little political commentary, then I'm sorry, this is not really the show for you, and it arguably, in my opinion, never has been. For crying out loud, the last script editor of Doctor Who in the 1980s was Andrew Cartmel, who oversaw what is considered by fans to be some of one of the best runs of stories in the show's history, including stories like Ghostlight, The Curse of Fenric, The Happiness Patrol, Remembrance of the Daleks. He took on the job as script editor, in his own words, to try and take down the government, the Thatcher government at that time. Obviously, it did not work, and I'm not trying to say that Russell T Davies was trying to bring down New Labour or anything, but media is made in an environment, it is made in a society, and thus it reflects that society at the time it was made. So, with that out of the way, let us dive into Doctor Who, Aliens of London. And I just remembered I've not got the steelbook out. I'm so bad at preparation. Okay, I've already got the holders there for those because I forgot all about. I'll just stand this up. Okay, so Aliens of London, broadcast on April 16th, 2005. I kind of have memories of watching this with my family. I think we were at the kitchen table eating, and the TV was on because my family was realizing, oh, this is our son's new favorite thing. Let's watch it with him. And from what I recall, I don't remember knowing whether or not I knew this was a two-parter going into it. I'm inclined to think I didn't know. I can't really remember. But anyway, written by Russell T Davies, directed by Keith Boak as part of the first Doctor Who filming block, along with Rose and World War III. And also, we'll point out when we get to it, Christopher Eccleston's very first day on set. Right, let's dive in. Yay, back to the Powell estate. I'm sure the actual people who live in that estate now are sick of Doctor Who tourists. Ooh, another Murray Gold track that's not on the soundtrack. God, he looks so good next to that TARDIS. Who is this Shireen? Okay, comment prompt in the comment section down below. Who would you cast as Shireen? We're talking 2005 actresses, okay? Don't go too massive in terms of celebrity status like a Sheridan Smith or whatever, but I want to know, who do you cast as Shireen? Big Finish, I've got to pull that trigger eventually, right? I like that music cue as the Doctor figures it out, or at least cottons onto something. I was at Shireen's for a whole year. Spoilers. See, that's how I react to my cats when they go missing for 30 minutes in the house. What is that? One second. Okay, everyone focuses so much on the Bad Wolf graffiti. This guy was wearing some demonic kick-ass jumper. That is such a cool shirt. Sorry, I guess you know, everyone's so preoccupied with the Bad Wolf graffiti. You know, we'll park Bad Wolf. We'll ignore that, whatever. But that kick-ass shirt, I've never seen that before.
I meant to phone. I really did. I forgot. What, for a year?
I really relate to that.
Say companion, is this a sexual relationship?
No.
That is such almost like a galling line to put in hindsight. Like, it's kind of appropriate considering the context here and that, you know, 2005 safeguarding policing and stuff like that. They'd obviously ask that question, but the fact that it's brought up in the show itself and they, you know, they include it. Yeah, you can't really imagine that happening with, I don't know, Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred in the late 80s, or Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant, or so. Well, I don't know, you've seen the expanded media stuff, you've seen the BBV videos, you know, maybe so. But I think it's a smart inclusion to just sort of further ground and domesticate the show, essentially.
Prove it. Stitch this, mate. Did you think about
A good slap. It's a testament to Camille Coduri as well, who continues to play the role brilliantly of Jackie Tyler to this day in Big Finish audio dramas, and I'm sure we're going to hear more from her in upcoming Big Finish audios with the Ninth Doctor and Rose as well. But like the fact that she's able to do the, you know, almost like the stages of grief of like the yelling and the bombast and the slapping and everything, and then it hard cuts to this, and she's like so emotional and so like earnest and affecting here. Like, get you an actress who can do both. She's so underrated across the entire run as well. Like, all of the seasons and appearances she's done, she's frequently brilliant. It's a hell of a dramatic conceit as well for like Billie Piper to play with here. The idea that like I was just gone a couple of hours, however time is relative in this case, and she can't quite, not because she can't do it as an actress, but the character literally can't do it. Like, I can't comprehend the year-long gap that's happened. I can't comprehend the absence, because for me it was just a few hours. So she's so blindsided by this. So she doesn't underplay it. She sells it completely, but there's only so far the character can take it, and Billie Piper goes to that line. It's a great, like, creative choice in terms of her performance.
Where were you?
She can't go as big as Camille in this scene because the impact's not as big. She's more like awkward and upset and guilty about it. That's a simple sound effect, but a really strong one. I love the Slitheen's ship design. I particularly love the rotating, what do you call them, the rotating discs on the side? And its confidence as well in the mill, and Keith Boak as well and Ernie Vince, to like really linger on these long shots. They know it looks good for 2005. They know the spaceship looks good. So, the time is not actually 10 o'clock. The time is 2 o'clock in universe, but they put the clock face on backwards, or they filmed it the wrong way around. It was the wrong spaceship wing, because as you can see by this shot, it's gonna be the right wing that's on the correct side of Big Ben to hit it. However, when they built the model and went to destroy it, I don't know how, but somehow they used the wrong wing, or they shot it from the wrong angle, so they had to flip the image, they had to flip the clock face. There we go, Rose, you're not so special. My only experience driving in central London was on a TV job when I was helping the art department, and I had to drive a Luton van through central London. My first time driving in central London, and it's not even my own car, it's a Luton van with props in it. Stressful. Stressful, stressful. No one drives in London, there's too much traffic. Yeah, the Doctor already knows more than he's letting on, I think. Yeah, this is what I was talking about for the Rose reaction as well, how they can't show high quality, seamless broadcast footage. They have to frame it by filming the TV in case channel surfers pop onto the scene. But it's interesting framing Doctor Who through the 24/7 news coverage. That wasn't a thing when the show was on in the 60s, 70s and the 80s. The 24-hour news cycle is very much like a late 90s, early 21st century type thing. When was the O.J. Simpson chase? Yeah, it was 1994. So the O.J. Simpson chase, when he's fleeing police officers and it's like basically wall-to-wall coverage of like the helicopters chasing him down the highway and everything and the police following him. That was kind of the beginning of the 24-hour news cycle, in layman's terms. So that's one big cultural evolution from Doctor Who leaving in 1989 to coming back in 2005. And even though I was just 12 years old at the time of this episode's broadcast, I still sort of like have like a connection to this source material at the time, even though I was so young. Like, I remember coming home from school on 9/11 in 2001, and, you know, I came home and my mum was watching the news in the kitchen, and there was the image of the smoking towers. And more recently, we had something like COVID, where in 2020, you know, when we were locked down, I would sit down every weekday and watch the news and see what the new numbers were, see what the new guidelines were, and any changes and updates, basically. You know, it's the rolling news coverage that makes Doctor Who feel very modern in 2005. Is he an actor, or is he like an actual BBC broadcaster? Because that's something they tend to do a lot in this era. Nope, sorry, it's Jack Troughton. You know, Hitchinson can't get you. He's not real. But he's very good in these scenes. Trinity Wells. Icon. Alright, Matt. Folks, does anyone know if that's like an actual Blue Peter clip? Does anyone know if that's an actual one filmed especially for this episode? Let me know in the comment section. And Albion Hospital. It's only a small Easter egg, but we're going to go back to this place and the empty child and the Doctor dances. And it's kind of interesting. I know that this scenario is different here, and the Doctor's like under pressure. He's trying to watch the TV screen. But speaking of empty child and the Doctor dances, it's interesting how Russell and Stephen Moffat, how they differentiate how the Doctor interacts with kids here. It's only a fleeting encounter. Maybe I'm, you know, looking way too much into this, but the idea that the Ninth Doctor, written by Russell, sees kids as a nuisance who need to be shoved out the way, whereas Moffat is much more like, let's sit down at the table and, you know, make jokes about Marxism.
Confirm the presence of an alien body contained inside those walls.
Yeah, it kind of does feel like this is what an actual, like, if something like this were to happen, even in modern day 2025, 20 years later, it kind of feels like, okay, we're seeing this, we've got cameras operating, we've got 24-hour news coverage, but we're kind of relying on official confirmation from government sources. Ernie Vince was like, find me the most orange building you can find. And of course, we wouldn't know it at the time, but this is Toshiko Sato, played by Naoko Mori, who would later appear in Torchwood. In Torchwood, we learn that she's a technical expert, she's not a medically trained doctor, or maybe she has some training, but it's meant to be Owen, the actual doctor of Torchwood, who's meant to be here, but he was hungover, so asked Toshiko to cover him, which is like a nice little bit of like in-universe lore to kind of explain why this character is here, even though she's not the actual Torchwood doctor.
Mystery still surrounds the
Oh, yeah, Andrew Marr. So, okay, they have actually got a BBC journalist to film material here. I forgot he was in this. Andrew Marr's still active in journalism as well, 20 years later.
Excuse me. Harriet.
Ah, hello, Harriet. Penelope Wilton. And to think this was only a year after Shaun of the Dead, which I kind of mainly know her from Shaun of the Dead and from Doctor Who as well. But yeah, she's great. She's great. And shout out, of course, to David Verry as Joseph Green and Navin Chowdhury as Indra Ganesh. Like, really memorable performances from memorable characters.
Outside London, that makes you acting Prime Minister with immediate effect.
Like, is that true? Is that true? Just because the cabinet's outside of London, does that mean that the prime ministerial duties just fall to literally whoever is in that building with the highest authority? Is that some political students have to tell me, some political scientists, you must let me know. I demand you comment below and let me know. There really is no dignified way to make that farting joke work. I don't know. I'm still mixed on it after all this time. I don't believe I found it that funny even when I was 12. They scientifically, in quotes, explain it in the series, but I don't know. I think in terms of the comedy, that might be the element that's aged the most. But it is wholly consistent with someone who would later write The Literal Bogeyman 20 years later. I think David Verry in this episode is very underrated. His ability to go from, you know, pompous but nervous cabinet member outside putting a brave face for the public to go to this like megalomaniacal Slitheen family leader behind closed doors, very difficult tightrope to walk. I think he does it. He's very good across this two-parter.
Just this morning, you're all tiny and small and made of clay. Now you can expand.
It's another bit of like moral ambiguity from the Doctor. We kind of saw this in The Unquiet Dead last week, but the idea that the Doctor is, in this case, finds it very easy to lie to Rose and is able to put that brave face on. It almost like, with the hindsight of what we know what's going to happen in this episode, it almost kind of feels like patronizing a little bit, like that speech, like the tone of his voice and everything. He clearly wants to get away, but not upset Rose. Yeah, I like this interpretation. And once again, it's the conflict between the Doctor and companion that I think is so foundational to the show's success in 2005. It's almost a little bit scary just how easily he's able to lie like that to her, and how comfortable he is doing it. There we go, I think this is the first time that we see the Ninth Doctor on his own in the TARDIS as well. I will not comment. Jesus, this ship is just held together on a wish and a dream, isn't it? Treating this highly advanced ship like a Terry's chocolate orange. No, you don't tap it, you whack it. That reference will age me. Google it. Google it.
I'm hardly one of the babes, just a faithful backbencher.
Okay, and here's another example of it being very current. One of the babes means Blair's babes, Tony Blair's babes. When Tony Blair came into power in the late 1990s, there were around 100 new female MPs. They were referred to as Blair's babes.
The saints, get some perspective, woman.
He's very Starmer-coded, isn't he? It's going to upset a lot of people, innit? But yeah, but if she referenced the Blair's babes and was like, I'm not one of them against the backbencher, presumably she's a Labour MP then, right? She's got a constituency. Yeah, that's right. Just put the cottage hospitals thing into the emergency protocol big red suitcase. That won't look conspicuous at all. She's about to get a preview of Children of Earth. What is the policy if the aliens demand our children? Give them over. Oh, speaking of Torchwood, you can tell things have gotten serious because it's not orange anymore. It's really blue. I've loved that detail, how he shushes the screwdriver. Well, one second, I need to check something. Was that part of the script? So this is Doctor Who, the shooting scripts. This is the actual completed shooting scripts of all of the episodes of the first series in one big hardback book. Honestly, I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't do this for other seasons or future seasons. But yeah, this is, I love reading stuff like this. Here's Aliens of London, Scene 37, Interior Hospital Storeroom. The TARDIS doors open, the Doctor looks out, a dark, cramped storeroom. Keeping quiet, the Doctor creeps over to the door, gets out the sonic screwdriver, whirs, it's loud. He shushes it, clicks to a lower setting, whirs. So yeah, that was scripted, the shushing of the screwdriver. There you go, the more you know.
Defense Part Delta, come on.
He instantly knows the jargon. There we go. The unknown, but he's clearly excited. I don't know if this was part of Eccleston's first day on set, but the next scene definitely was. Hello. Yeah, that's Jimmy V in the costume as well, who played the Mox of Balhoun. This was the first thing shot for Eccleston. Bang, bang!
What did you do that for? It was scared.
Once again, I'm going to narrativize like 20 years later, but I do like the fact that Eccleston's first scene as the Doctor was a scene where he's standing up for a small, defenseless alien creature. You know, I think there's something quite profound in that.
I'm shaking my booty.
Annette Badland, you'll be put to better use next week, I promise.
To relieve you of command.
See, that stuff's more affecting and scary. It just feels like it's a bit undercut by the farting. Like, I know in the next scene they acknowledge that the gas exchange is getting ridiculous and they need to fix it. So they're leaning into it for comedy and to, like, as a power grab, as a power play. Maybe there's a better way to handle it tonally.
It must have been terrified. They've taken this animal and turned it into a joke.
That's a nice character moment. Is, you know,
Like the mermaid.
the indignity of it and trying to
Fermenting its brain.
stand up for it. Right, we'll see you in the spin-off next year. That's a nice jacket. Rose has got a nice jacket. That's my big contribution to this scene.
Better than that is much more important and it
We'll see it played out over the series, but particularly for 9, he's way more of a father figure than a boyfriend. Right, Mum, you ever watched David Blaine?
anyway, don't start a fight. Like that is not
Yeah, and Rose has been pulled in multiple directions. I'm curious what that Gallifreyan language, that little post-it note says on the top right. Nurse, I found a plot hole. So in this scene, Jackie rings up this hotline, this helpline, and says that Rose called it a TARDIS, even though that word is never spoken around her. 0 out of 10. This is the worst episode ever. And this is another quite realistic thing. You know, when, for example, for the 7/7 bombings, when they happened, there was like a special hotline specifically just for that. So this is something that is done in like big events such as this.
I've seen
Not enough time to miss me then.
I think that's a digital zoom just then on Mickey. Yeah, I think this is the digital zoom. Just a bit too blurry.
Mistake.
I like those skin suits. Those are cool.
Had a wife, a mistress, and a young farmer. Oh, I was busy.
I forgot about that line. Jesus.
Code 9 confirmed. Code 9.
Code 9. Get it? It's because he's the 9th Doctor.
Does he work for them? Oh, yeah, don't think I
Back when his fashion sense was better. One of the very few references and callbacks to the classic series in this season. You can kind of count them on one hand, like UNIT, the Daleks, the Cyberman helmet in Van Statten's museum, the Web Planet reference in Bad Wolf, the Autons? There's that, yeah. That's not very believable, that they would just let him bolt and get away. Like, they've given chase, but like, yeah, he's just behind some bins.
hate to say it, but Mickey was right. Over the years, I've visited.
Yeah, he knows Mickey's name, he'll say it, just not to his face.
And who's the biggest expert of the lot?
Patrick Moore.
Apart from him,
Unfortunately, that's a reference that goes right over my head. I don't know who Patrick Moore is.
used to drink me under the table. Who's the Prime Minister now?
Wait, who used to drink him under the table?
Lloyd George.
Lloyd George used to...
Who's the Prime Minister now?
Off you go then.
Now, it's interesting, this element of the story as well. Like, you know, there's a little bit of like Terminator 2, you know, when James Cameron made the villain of the story a police officer because of, you know, cops are bad. But for this story as well, it's the idea of like, be presumptuous of obese people because they could be aliens in skin suits. Like, it's a bit of a contradiction where he designs and creates characters like Cassandra O'Brien in The End of the World to be like a cautionary tale about, you know, beauty standards and anorexia and cosmetic surgery and stuff. And then 2 weeks later, he's like, be suspicious of fat people. There's probably a essay to be written about that. Not by me, but by someone.
Excuse me. Are you the doctor?
Sure.
Not now, we're busy.
Right. I'll look after her. Let me be of some use.
I like that initiative. She wants to speak to the doctor to let her know what she's seen. She can't, so she takes the companion. That's a really good bit of writing, I think. It includes her in the story, but makes her proactive in it. Speed read.
You can see from the summaries in front of you, the ship had one porcine pilot.
Porcine pilot is a very funny line.
100 fathoms. Like there's some
Yeah, this is very Tom Baker.
just about to investigate.
I know it's not a deliberate callback on Eccleston's part. When I think of other doctors he is similar to from the classic series, Sylvester McCoy and Tom Baker are kind of the two. Yeah, she doesn't know what to do. She is just winging it, but still finds the body of Tony Blair. Andrew Cartmel wanted to bring down the government. Russell T Davies killed the Prime Minister. I love how she's like almost in total darkness when she's outside the door, playing with her food. Annette Badland is so good here.
Anyone associated with him is trouble.
Yeah, as I was saying at the top, this is like every cliffhanger at the same time. Here we go, the big reveal. Ooh, I'm getting nostalgic. I like the sound effects. And the claws popping out. I do think the production team were punching way above their weight with the Slitheen. Sometimes you can see the strings on it, the metaphorical strings, but really ambitious. That's a great shot. As is that. Great cutting and editing as well, to like sync up the three reveals. And yeah, it's great suit.
We are the Slitheen.
And the sidewards blinking.
Thank you all for wearing your ID cards. They'll help to identify the bodies.
Oh, it looks cute in that shot. And I remember next time trailers for two-parters would be fixed after this, because we like immediately see that the characters in the cliffhanger are fine. There we go, there's 9. We see him. There's Rose and Harriet, Mickey and Jackie. So yeah, it kind of takes the wind out of the cliffhanger sails a little bit. So yeah, Aliens of London holds up better than I thought it did, but I think that there's a little bit of a maybe unintentional undercurrent to the conspiracy nature of the story. If this is going to be an allegory for 9/11 and the idea of like a false flag attack in order to curtail freedoms and stuff, this kind of seems very similar to sort of like Alex Jones, like Sandy Hook was a false flag to try and take our guns away. 9/11 was a false flag in order to install a bigger surveillance state. I don't know, it kind of feels like it's a 9/11 parallel that leans into the 9/11 being an inside job. Obviously it's sci-fi fiction for a family audience, so I don't think it was like deliberately going for that, and maybe it shouldn't be interpreted as such, but the art is what the art is. But yeah, there's a lot of plot and a lot to catch up on. I do think that if there's one thing holding this story back, it is tone. I think it's not quite got a handle on the tone as it did for The End of the World. It's like the farting aliens and the you know, the difficulty in trying to move the plot forward with the Doctor, Rose, Mickey and Jackie, whilst also making it seem as important and as urgent as what's happening in Downing Street. And if you're not on board with the domestic drama, if you're not on board with the family dynamic, with Rose going missing for 12 months and having to restart her life back up at home again, then I can understand this episode really not being for you. But now that the aliens have shown up in that cliffhanger, all of the cliffhangers at the same time, we'll see if World War III is able to sort of pick up some of the slack there and move the story a bit faster. But yeah, I'll see you folks next week for Doctor Who World War III. As for me, I'm not waiting. I'm diving straight back in. I'll see you folks next time.